My sister went out onto the roof and started screaming that someone was trying to hurt her, that I was holding her by force. She was clawing at the air, her face contorted in a mask of pure terror, pointing a shaking finger at me as I stood helplessly by the chimney. Below us, the neighborhood I had lived in for 40 years was watching, phones raised, recording my potential ruin. She begged them to call the police. At that moment, looking into her wild eyes, I realized the sister I knew was gone, replaced by something predatory. And I knew that to the world watching below, I was the villain. The introduction to this nightmare began long before the roof, but that moment was the catalyst. It was the moment I realized that blood might be thicker than water, but it can also drown you just as easily. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel. I share stories of betrayal, justice, and the complicated reality of family dynamics. Leave a comment below and tell me, at what point do you cut a toxic family member out of your life? Is there a line they have to cross, or do you owe them your loyalty forever? My name is Dexter. I am 72 years old. I am a retired structural engineer, a widower, and a grandfather to 3 beautiful children who visit me on Sundays. I live in a colonial-style house in a suburb of Chicago. It is a good house. Solid bones. I know because I inspected every beam and joist before Eleanor and I bought it 45 years ago. Eleanor passed away 5 years ago, leaving a silence in the hallways that I have slowly learned to live with. I fill the silence with the ticking of the grandfather clock, the hum of the refrigerator, and the audiobooks I listened to while gardening. I valued my peace. I valued my independence. I thought I had secured the rest of my life. I was wrong. 6 months ago, the phone rang. It was my younger sister, Martha. Martha is 68, though she acts 20 years younger and 20 years older, depending on what serves her best in the moment. We had not spoken in 3 years, not since she made a scene at my son David's wedding about the seating arrangements. Martha was crying. It was a wet, desperate sound. She told me she was being evicted. She told me her landlord was a criminal who had raised the rent illegally. She told me she had nowhere to go, and that she was terrified of sleeping in her car. She said the words that are designed to disarm a brother. I am your family, Dexter. You are all I have left. I am a man of duty. Our parents raised us to look out for one another. Despite everything, despite the years of borrowed money never returned, despite the drama, she was my sister. I told her she could stay for a few weeks, just until she got back on her feet. She arrived the next day in a U-Haul truck that she couldn't afford, driven by a man she had hired off the internet. She moved into the guest room, Eleanor's old sewing room. Within 48 hours, the house felt different. The air was heavier. The scent of her perfume, a cloying floral smell, masked the scent of my old wood polish. The first week was manageable. She slept late, watched television, and complained about her bad luck. But by the second week, the dynamic shifted. She stopped looking for apartments. She stopped talking about job interviews. Instead, she started talking about my house. It started with concern. She would watch me climb the stairs and say, "Dexter, your knees look terrible. You really shouldn't be in a 2-story house alone. It is dangerous." Then it became financial advice. She asked about my pension. She asked if the house was in a trust. She suggested that, at my age, I was a target for scammers and that I needed a younger person to manage my assets. She meant herself. I shut her down. Politely at first, then firmly. I told her my son David handled my estate planning. The mention of David made her eyes go cold. She hated David because David had her number. He knew she was a bottomless pit of need and manipulation. When she realized I wasn't going to sign over the deed or give her power of attorney, the war began. It was a campaign of erosion. She wanted to prove I was unfit. She wanted to prove I was dangerous. She needed leverage to force a guardianship or a settlement. I didn't see it coming. I thought she was just difficult. I didn't know she was malevolent. The first setup happened at the grocery store. It was a Tuesday morning. I usually shop alone. I enjoy the routine of it. I know the aisles. I know the butchers. But Martha insisted on coming. She said she needed specialized vitamins for her frail bones. We were in aisle 4, the canned goods and pasta aisle. It was relatively quiet, but there were a few shoppers, a young mother with a toddler, an elderly couple I recognized from church, and a stock boy restocking the shelves. I was looking for low-sodium chicken broth. It was on the top shelf. I am tall, but my shoulder gives me trouble, so I had to stretch. Martha was standing behind me, complaining about the temperature of the store. "Dexter, hurry up," she muttered. "It is freezing in here." I ignored her, reaching for the can. My fingertips brushed the metal. Suddenly, there was a loud crash behind me, followed by a scream that shattered the quiet of the store. I spun around, dropping the can of broth. Martha was on the floor. She had knocked over a freestanding display of kidney beans. Cans were rolling everywhere. She was sprawled on the linoleum, clutching her wrist, her face twisted in agony. "Why did you do that?" she shrieked. Her voice echoed off the tile floor. "Why did you push me?" I froze. My brain couldn't process the accusation. I stared at her, my hands still raised from reaching for the shelf. "Martha?" I said. "Get away from me!" she yelled, scrambling backward on the floor like a crab. "You are crazy! You are an old lunatic!" The young mother stared at me with wide, fearful eyes, pulling her toddler close. The stock boy came running. "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "He shoved me," Martha sobbed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He got mad because I was in his way. He just threw me into the cans. Look at my wrist. It's broken." I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked around. The judgment was instantaneous. They saw a frail old woman on the floor. They saw a tall, imposing man standing over her. "I didn't touch her," I stammered. "I was reaching for the soup. I was 5 feet away." "Liar!" she screamed. "You have been hurting me for weeks. Help me, please. Someone help me." The store manager arrived. He was a stern man named Miller. He looked at the mess. He looked at Martha weeping, and he looked at me. "Sir, step back," Miller said, his voice hard. "I am not doing anything," I pleaded. "This is a misunderstanding. She is my sister." "I don't care who she is," Miller said. "You need to step away from the customer." They helped Martha up. She limp-walked to the front of the store, leaning heavily on the stock boy, casting fearful glances back at me. I stood alone in the aisle, surrounded by spilled beans, feeling a shame so hot it burned my skin. Miller took us to the office. Martha demanded they call the police. She demanded they document the assault. She talked about lawsuits. She talked about elder abuse. But Miller was a cautious man. He didn't call the police immediately. He called security. "Let's look at the tape," he said. Martha stiffened. I saw it, a tiny flicker of panic in her eyes. "The camera," she said quickly. "The camera probably didn't catch it. It was a blind spot." "We will see," Miller said. We watched the monitor in silence. The footage was grainy, black and white, but undeniable. On the screen, I was reaching for the shelf. My back was to Martha. Martha looked around, checked the aisle, and then threw herself backward into the display with the force of a linebacker. I hadn't come within arm's reach of her. The silence in the office was deafening. Miller paused the video. He looked at Martha. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "you need to leave my store." She didn't apologize. She didn't confess. She turned purple with rage. "This camera is rigged," she shouted. "You edited it." "Get out," Miller said, "or I will call the police for destruction of property." We drove home in silence. I was shaking. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. "Why?" I asked her finally as we turned onto our street. Why would you do that? She looked out the window, her expression calm, almost bored. You need supervision, Dexter. You are losing your mind. If I have to be the one to show the world, I will. That was the moment I should have evicted her, but I was afraid. She was already building a narrative. If I kicked her out now, she would go to the police and say I threw her out because she threatened to expose my abuse. I was trapped. I called David that night. He was furious. He wanted to come over and drag her out. No, I told him. If we use force, she wins. She needs to be the aggressor. We need proof. So I waited. I installed a lock on my bedroom door. I started keeping a journal. I avoided being in the same room as her. But you cannot avoid someone who lives in your house. The psychological pressure was immense. She would hum while she walked the halls. She would move my things, my keys, my glasses, just to make me think I was losing my memory. The second setup happened 3 weeks later. It was more intimate and far more dangerous. I have high blood pressure. I take medication for it. I am meticulous about it. One evening, I decided to make beef stew. It was Eleanor's recipe, rich, hearty, with a specific blend of herbs. Cooking was my therapy. It was the one thing Martha hadn't ruined yet. I served 2 bowls. I set the table. I tried to be civil. We ate in silence for 10 minutes. The only sound was the scraping of spoons. Suddenly, Martha dropped her spoon. It clattered loudly against the china. She grabbed her throat with both hands. "Dexter," she choked out. "What?" I asked, looking up. "My throat. It burns. What did you put in this?" Her voice was raspy, strained. "I put beef and potatoes in it, Martha." "Stop it! You poisoned me!" she gagged. She stood up, knocking her chair over. She stumbled backward, clutching her chest. "You are trying to kill me!" She fell to the floor, writhing. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Her face was flushed, her breathing ragged. I stood up, terrified despite myself. "Martha, stop acting." She fumbled for her phone in her pocket. She dialed 911. I watched, paralyzed, as she screamed into the receiver. "Help me! My brother! He poisoned the food. I can't breathe. Please!" The sirens came quickly. In the suburbs, a poisoning call is a major event. 2 squad cars and an ambulance. I stood on the front porch as the paramedics rushed past me. They loaded her onto a stretcher. She was weeping, telling them I had forced her to eat it, that I had been smiling while she choked. The police officers were not like Mr. Miller at the grocery store. They were young, aggressive, and seeing a victim. "Sir, step away from the house," one officer ordered, his hand resting near his holster. "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice trembling. "It is just stew. We will see about that. We are taking the pot into evidence." I sat in the back of a squad car for an hour while they questioned me. The neighbors were all outside. Mrs. Gable from across the street was watching with her hand over her mouth. I saw the suspicion in their eyes. Dexter, the nice old man, was a poisoner. They released me that night only because there was no immediate proof. But the damage was done. A police report was filed. Domestic disturbance. Alleged poisoning. Martha spent the night in the hospital. The toxicology screen came back clean the next morning. No poison, no toxins. The doctors called it a panic-induced episode, or perhaps severe reflux. But when she came home, she didn't look defeated. She looked triumphant. She had a paper trail now. She had police reports. She told the neighbors I had tried to kill her, but that she had survived because she had a strong constitution. She told them she was afraid to leave because I controlled her money. A lie. She was painting a masterpiece of victimhood, and I was the monster. The third setup, the roof incident, was the escalation I had been dreading. It was a Saturday. I was in the backyard, pruning the rose bushes. I was trying to find some peace in the soil. Martha had been manic all morning, pacing the house, muttering about how our parents would be ashamed of me. I heard the window slide open above me. The guest room window opens onto the porch roof. It is a flat, sloping roof covered in asphalt shingles. I looked up. Martha was climbing out. She was wearing her nightgown, though it was 2 in the afternoon. "Martha!" I yelled. "What are you doing?" She ignored me. She walked to the edge of the roof, right over the gutter. It is a 12-foot drop to the concrete patio. I dropped my shears and ran to the garage. I grabbed the aluminum ladder. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I thought she was going to jump. I thought she had finally broken completely. I propped the ladder against the porch and scrambled up. My bad hip screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I reached the roof line. I climbed up, my hands gripping the rough shingles. "Martha, please," I said, reaching a hand out. "Come back inside. It isn't safe." And then she smiled. It was a cold, lucid smile. She took a deep breath and started to scream. "Help! He is trying to push me! He is holding me hostage!" That brings us to the teaser. The neighbors running out, the cameras, me, standing on the roof with my hand outstretched, looking for all the world like I was reaching to shove her. The police arrived with sirens wailing. This time they had guns drawn. "Get down on your stomach!" the sergeant screamed at me from the lawn. I lay down on the gritty shingles, humiliated, terrified. They came up the ladder. They handcuffed me on my own roof. They dragged me down. Martha was rescued by the fire department. She played the part perfectly. She was shaking, weeping, wrapping herself in the blanket they gave her. "He chased me," she told the female officer. "He had a hammer. He said he was going to bash my brains in if I didn't sign the will." They searched the house for a hammer. They found one in my toolbox in the garage, where it always is. They took it as evidence. I was taken to the station. I was fingerprinted. I was processed. I sat in a holding cell for 6 hours. It was the lowest point of my life. I thought about Eleanor. I thought about how she would be heartbroken to see me here. My lawyer, a friend of David's, got me out. The charges wouldn't stick. A neighbor, God bless Mrs. Higgins, had given a statement. She had been watching birds from her window. She saw Martha climb out alone. She saw me run for the ladder looking panicked. She saw that I had nothing in my hands. Her testimony saved me from a felony charge. But the police were done with me. The sergeant walked me to the exit. "Look, Mr. Sterling," he said, "I don't know what is going on in that house, but we have been there 3 times. Poison, assault. Now this. Someone is going to get hurt. If we come back, someone is going to jail, and I don't care who it is." I went home. Martha was there. She had refused to leave. She had squatter's rights, she claimed. She was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea. She looked up at me. "You are lucky, Dexter," she said softly. "Next time, there won't be a witness." I went to my room and locked the door. I sat in the dark. I realized then that she was right. Next time, she would throw herself down the stairs and bruise herself beforehand. Next time, she would use a knife on herself and put it in my hand while I slept. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't leave my home. It was all I had. I realized that playing defense was a losing game. Martha thrived on my passivity. She used the legal system as a weapon because she knew I feared it. She used my desire for dignity against me. I needed to change the rules. If she wanted to live in a thriller movie, I would give her one. If she wanted me to be a criminal, I would show her what a criminal looked like. This is the middle of the story, where the victim becomes the architect. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I called my friend Professor Halloway, who teaches theater arts at the local university. "I need actors," I told him. "Good ones. Improvisational." He asked what for. I told him it was a private, immersive experience. He gave me 3 names. I met them at a coffee shop 3 towns over. Leo, a burly young man with a beard and intense eyes. Sarah, a sharp-looking woman with a scar on her chin, makeup I learned later. And Mike, who looked like he could be an accountant or a hitman depending on his glasses. I bought them coffee. I put $500 on the table. This is a one-night performance, I told them. No script, just a scenario. You are not students. You are criminals. We are a syndicate, and my sister is the problem we need to solve. They listened. At first they were confused. Then, as I explained the abuse, the setups, the police visits, they got angry on my behalf. Then, they got excited. This was the role of a lifetime. We planned it for Friday. For the next 4 days, I prepared the ground. I had to make Martha paranoid. I had to feed her confirmation bias. I bought a cheap burner phone. When Martha walked into a room, I would be whispering into it. "No, the shipment is too big," I would hiss, staring her right in the eyes. "We need to clean the cache first." Then I would hang up and smile at her, a cold, dead smile. She started following me. She put her ear to my door. I went to the bank and withdrew $2,000 in $1 bills. I put them in a thick envelope. I left it on the kitchen table for 30 seconds, just long enough for her to see the bulge. When she reached for it, I snatched it away. "Don't touch that," I snapped. "That isn't money you want to be involved with." Her eyes widened. She was hooked. She thought she had found the smoking gun. She thought, "This is it. He is into something illegal. This is how I get the house." On Friday night, I set the stage. I told Martha to stay in her room. I told her I had business associates coming over and that it was dangerous for her to be seen. I knew exactly what that would trigger. At 8 p.m., the actors arrived. They didn't park in the driveway. They parked down the street and walked up, wearing leather jackets and dark sunglasses. Leo carried a heavy black duffel bag. They walked in without knocking. I locked the door behind them. I had rearranged the living room. I moved the coffee table to the center. I closed the heavy drapes. On the table, I placed the props. I had taken bags of flour and wrapped them tightly in saran wrap and duct tape. They looked exactly like kilos of cocaine. I placed a crowbar on the table. I placed the stack of cash. I placed a digital scale I use for mailing packages. We sat around the table. I nodded to the ceiling. "She is upstairs," I said, pitching my voice to carry through the vents. "Is she going to be a problem?" Leo asked, his voice a deep rumble. "She knows too much," Sarah said, her voice icy. "We can't leave loose ends, Dexter. The boss won't like it." I watched the ceiling. I heard the floorboards creak. She was directly above us. She was listening to every word. "We need to move the product tonight," Mike said, "and we need to deal with the witness." I waited. I checked my watch. Above us, I heard the faint murmur of a voice, then the sound of a door clicking shut. She was on the phone. I knew who she was calling. We continued the improvisation for 7 minutes. We talked about the Colombian, about washing the money, about making it look like an accident. It was terrifyingly realistic. Then we heard it. The distant wail of sirens. They were coming fast. Martha must have told them there was a murder in progress. "It's time," I whispered. We moved with practiced efficiency. The cocaine bricks were swept into the bottom drawer of the sideboard. The crowbar and scale went into the hall closet. Leo opened the duffel bag. He took out the real contents: a Monopoly board, a box of Scrabble, a bowl of potato chips, a few bottles of craft soda. We opened the Monopoly board on the coffee table. We distributed the colorful paper money. We set up the little metal tokens: the car, the thimble, the dog. We poured the chips into the bowl. I turned on the stereo. Soft, smooth jazz filled the room. We sat back. We relaxed our shoulders. We picked up our cards. When the front door burst open, the scene was aggressively wholesome. "Police! Show me your hands!" 3 officers stormed into the hallway. 2 had shotguns. 1 had a taser. They were ready for a shootout. They were ready for a cartel. What they found was 4 people freezing in the middle of a board game. I stood up slowly, putting my hands up, looking utterly bewildered. "Officer?" I asked. What is happening? The lead officer, a large man named Kowalski, scanned the room. His gun lowered slightly. He looked at the Monopoly board. He looked at the chips. He looked at the soda. "Where are the drugs?" he shouted. "We got a call about narcotics and a conspiracy to commit murder." "Drugs?" I repeated, looking at the students. "These are my grandnephews and niece, officer. We are playing Monopoly. It is game night." We heard the footsteps on the stairs. Martha came running down, screaming in triumph. "You got them! You got them! They are in the living room! They have the cocaine! They have the money!" She skidded to a halt in the living room. She pointed a shaking finger at the table. "Look! Look at the—" Her voice died. She stared at the Monopoly board. She stared at the little green houses and red hotels. "Where is it?" she whispered. "Where is what, ma'am?" Officer Kowalski asked, his voice tight with frustration. "The drugs! The white bricks! They had tools! They were talking about killing me!" I stepped forward, putting a hand on her shoulder. She flinched away. "Martha," I said gently. "Please, not again!" "She is lying!" Martha screamed, her eyes wild. "They hid it! It's in the drawer! I heard them put it in the drawer!" She lunged for the sideboard. Officer Kowalski watched her. "Go ahead, ma'am," he said. She ripped the drawer open. Inside, there were packages. But I had swapped them. These were packages of cocktail napkins and a stack of expired coupons. She tore into the napkins, throwing them into the air like confetti. "Where is it?" "You magicians! You devils!" Leo spoke up. He looked terrified, shrinking into the sofa. "Uncle Dexter, is she okay?" "She's scaring me." The officer looked at Leo. He looked at the wholesome scene. He looked at the crazed woman standing in a pile of napkins. He holstered his gun. He took a deep breath. "Ma'am, step away from the furniture. It's a trick," Martha wailed. "They are actors. He hired them." Officer Kowalski turned to me. "Sir, this is the same address from the roof incident and the poisoning?" "Yes, sir," I said, looking down at the floor. "My sister. She has been struggling. She has paranoid delusions. She thinks I am trying to hurt her. I tried to have a quiet game night to distract her, but—" I didn't finish. I let the silence do the work. Kowalski turned to Martha. His face was like stone. "Ma'am, you called 911 and reported a violent felony in progress. You mobilized a SWAT response. Do you have any idea what that cost the city? Do you have any idea the danger you put these officers in?" "It was real," she sobbed. "This is a Monopoly game," Kowalski said, pointing at the board. "You are seeing things that aren't there, and you are wasting police resources." He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, stand down backup. Code 4, no threat. We have a mental health situation." He looked at Martha. "Ma'am, you have two choices. I can arrest you right now for filing a false police report and misuse of the 911 system. Or you can leave this premises immediately and seek help. But you cannot stay here. You are a danger to the peace of this household." I have nowhere to go," she stammered. "That is not my problem," Kowalski said. "You can't stay here. Your brother has been patient, but this is harassment." I looked at Martha. For the first time in 6 months, she looked at me and saw the truth. She saw that I had beaten her. She saw the actors watching her with pity. "I will pack," she whispered. While she packed, the police waited in the hall. I sat with the students. We didn't speak. We just moved the Monopoly pieces around the board in silence. When Martha came down with her suitcases, she looked old. She looked defeated. She stopped at the door. "You are a devil, Dexter," she hissed. I didn't look at her. I rolled the dice. "Double sixes," I said. The police escorted her out. They waited until the taxi came. They made sure she got in. When the taillights disappeared around the corner, the tension in the room snapped. Leo let out a long breath. "Holy cow," he said. That was intense. You were brilliant, I told them. I went to the Scrabble box. I lifted the false bottom. The real cash was there. I paid them each an extra $100. They left, shaking my hand. They looked at me with a new kind of respect. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. The next morning I called a locksmith. I had every lock in the house changed. I installed a camera system with audio recording. Martha tried to sue me a month later. She found a lawyer who would listen to her story about the fake drug bust. But when the lawyer requested the police reports, the grocery store video, the negative toxicology report, the neighbor's statement about the roof, and the police report regarding the Monopoly game, he dropped her like a hot stone. No judge would sign an order for her. Her credibility was incinerated. I received a call last week from a cousin in Ohio. Martha is staying with them now. The cousin wanted to know if Martha really had a deathly allergy to tap water, or if she was making it up to get bottled water. I laughed. I laughed so hard my ribs hurt. She is making it up, I said. Good luck. I hung up the phone. I walked into my kitchen. I made a pot of tea. I sat in my living room, in my favorite chair. The sun was streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The house was silent. No screaming, no accusations, no fear. I looked at the grandfather clock. It ticked steadily, a heartbeat returning to its normal rhythm. I had fought fire with fire. I had used deception to reveal the truth. And I had won. Thank you for reading my story. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And I have a question for you all. Do you think I went too far? Should I have just let the police handle it, even if they didn't believe me? Or was the Monopoly sting the only way to save my life? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.